There are moments in life when grief should bring people together, but instead, it tears them apart in ways you never imagined possible. I'm about to share with you a story about love, loss, and a betrayal that came knocking at my door just 3 days after I buried the man I'd loved for 55 years. What happened next tested everything I believed about dignity, justice, and moving forward when the people who should support you become your accusers. My name is Grace Thompson. I'm 81 years old now, and I've spent most of my life teaching piano to children in our small Connecticut town. I'm sitting here in what used to be my husband William's study, surrounded by his beloved collection of first edition novels and old photographs. Our wedding picture still sits on the piano where he placed it decades ago. 2 young people smiling at the camera, completely unaware of what the years would bring. I met William in 1968 at a community concert where I was performing Chopin. I was 24, the daughter of a public school music teacher, wearing a dress my mother had sewn by hand. William was 26, tall and serious, with kind brown eyes that watched me play with such focused attention that I nearly forgot the notes. He came up to me afterward, and the first thing he said was, "You made that piano sing like I've never heard before." We married 6 months later in a small ceremony that his family barely attended. You see, William came from the Caldwell family. Old money. The kind that built half the buildings in our town back in the 1890s. His mother, Eleanor Caldwell, wore black to our wedding, as if she were mourning rather than celebrating. To her, I was that poor piano teacher's daughter, someone who had trapped her brilliant son with cheap charm and pretty fingers. "William," she told him on our wedding day, loud enough for me to hear, "you're throwing away everything we've built for 5 generations." She never forgave him for choosing me. For 55 years, she never forgave him. But William never wavered. He held my hand through his mother's cold stares at Christmas dinners, through his brother Robert's snide comments about my simple background, through his sister Patricia's pointed remarks about my modest clothing and lack of social connections. "Grace," he would tell me on those difficult evenings, "they have money and names carved in marble. We have something they'll never understand. We have us." Our life wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. William worked as an architect, designing libraries and schools rather than the country clubs his family expected. I taught piano in our home, filling our modest house with the sound of children's laughter and stumbling scales. We never had children of our own, something his family blamed me for naturally, but we had each other, and we had music, and we had quiet Sunday mornings reading the newspaper together over coffee. The years passed like movements in a symphony, sometimes fast and joyful, sometimes slow and contemplative, but always together. We grew old the way we'd grown together, gradually, gratefully, holding hands through it all. Then came November 2023. William was 79, and I was almost 80. He'd been feeling tired, losing weight he couldn't afford to lose. When the diagnosis came back, the doctor's words fell like stones into still water. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4, inoperable, 6 months, maybe less. I remember William's hand in mine, cold and trembling, as the doctor explained our options. Aggressive chemotherapy that might buy a few extra weeks, but would leave him sick and weak. Experimental treatments with low success rates and high suffering. Or hospice care. Comfort, dignity, peace. William looked at me with those same brown eyes that had watched me play Chorin 55 years earlier. "Grace," he said softly, "I'm not afraid of dying. I'm only afraid of dying badly. I don't want tubes and hospitals and fighting against the inevitable. I want to be home with you, in our house, with our music. I want to go gently." I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. We started hospice care that December. For the next 5 months, I cared for William the way he'd cared for me through 55 years of marriage, with complete devotion. I learned to manage his pain medications, to help him when he became too weak to walk, to read to him when his eyes grew too tired for books. I played piano for him every evening, all his favorite pieces, watching his face relax into something like contentment as the music filled our home. His brother Robert visited twice during those 5 months. His sister Patricia came 3 times, always staying less than an hour, always finding something to criticize. "He looks thin, Grace. Are you feeding him enough? This room is stuffy. Don't you open the windows? Mother would be appalled at how you're handling this." They never asked how I was doing. They never offered to help with his care, to sit with him so I could rest, to simply be present for their dying brother. They came, criticized, and left, leaving me alone with William and his fading strength. In early May 2024, William slipped into unconsciousness. The hospice nurse told me it would be soon now, maybe days. That's when Robert called, demanding that William be taken to the hospital. "There are treatments," he insisted. "You're giving up on him." I was so tired I could barely stand, having slept in a chair by William's bed for 3 nights. "Robert," I said as gently as I could manage, "William made his choice. He doesn't want aggressive intervention. He wants peace." "You want him dead," Robert hissed. "You want the money." I hung up on him. It was the first time in 55 years I'd been deliberately rude to anyone in William's family. William died on May 18th, 2024, on a Saturday morning when the spring sunshine was streaming through our bedroom windows. I was holding his hand, playing a recording of Debussy's Clair de Lune, his favorite. He took 3 soft breaths, and then he was gone. Just like that. Peacefully, the way he'd wanted. In our home, with our music, with me. I sat with him for a long time after, holding his hand as it grew cold, talking to him about all our years together, thanking him for every moment. The hospice nurse came and was kind. The funeral director was gentle. Our neighbors brought food I couldn't eat. The funeral was on a Tuesday. Robert and Patricia sat in the front pew on the opposite side from me, their faces hard and cold. They didn't speak to me at the reception afterward. They didn't acknowledge the eulogy I'd written, where I'd shared stories of William's kindness and humor. They simply left, and I thought that was the end of it. I was wrong. 3 days later, on Friday afternoon, my doorbell rang. I was still wearing one of William's old sweaters, finding comfort in the smell of his cologne that lingered in the fabric. I hadn't slept properly since he died. I was existing in that strange fog of early grief, where you forget he's gone and then remember all over again, each time like a fresh wound. I opened the door to find Robert, Patricia, and a man in an expensive suit carrying a briefcase. My heart sank. "Grace," Robert said, his voice cold as January ice, "we need to talk about William's death." I stepped back, confused. "What about it?" The man in the suit spoke. "Mrs. Thompson, I'm Gerald Morrison, attorney for the Caldwell family. May we come in?" I led them to the living room on shaking legs. They sat on the sofa where William and I used to read together on Sunday afternoons. I sat in his favorite chair, gripping the armrests. Robert leaned forward, his face twisted with something between grief and rage. "We're going to report you to the police for murder." The word hung in the air like a discordant note. I couldn't breathe. "What?" I whispered. Patricia spoke for the first time, her voice sharp. "You refused medical treatment for William. You kept him from the hospital. You gave him all those pain medications. Who knows what else you gave him to speed things along?" "Patricia," I said, my voice breaking, "William was dying. He was in hospice care. Everything we did was according to his wishes and his doctor's orders." "His wishes," Robert sneered. "How convenient that he's not here to confirm that, is it? We think you influenced him, maybe even forged that hospice agreement. You wanted him dead so you could inherit everything." Mr. Morrison opened his briefcase and pulled out papers. "Mrs. Thompson, my clients have evidence suggesting you may have hastened Mr. Caldwell's death. The rapid deterioration in his final weeks, your refusal of hospital treatment, the doses of morphine administered, it all paints a troubling picture." My hands were shaking so hard I had to clasp them together. "Evidence? What evidence?" "The hospice kept detailed records of everything. His doctor can verify. We have our own medical expert who reviewed the timeline," Mr. Morrison interrupted, "and we're prepared to take this to the police and the district attorney. However, we're willing to forego legal action if you agree to relinquish all claims to William's estate." The truth hit me then, cold and brutal. This wasn't about William at all. This was about money. William's estate was worth approximately $2.3 million. The house we'd lived in for 40 years, his investments, his life insurance. According to his will, which he'd updated just 2 months before his diagnosis, everything came to me. Robert and Patricia received nothing, a deliberate choice William had made after years of their coldness and criticism. "You're blackmailing me," I said softly. "We're offering you a choice," Robert said. "Sign over the estate to us, and we'll let the question of William's death rest. Refuse, and we'll make sure everyone knows what you did. The police will investigate. The newspapers will write about it. Your name will be dragged through the mud." "Is that what you want at your age?" Patricia added almost gently, "Mother always said you married William for money." "Don't prove her right by fighting us on this." I looked at these two people, William's own brother and sister, and saw nothing of the man I'd loved in their faces. No grief, no loss, just greed and resentment that had festered for 55 years. "Get out," I said. "Mrs. Thompson," Mr. Morrison began, "get out of my house." I stood up, surprised by the strength in my voice. "William wanted nothing to do with you in life, and I'll be damned if I let you profit from his death. If you want to report me to the police, do it. If you want to sue me, sue me. But I will not be bullied in the home I shared with my husband while his body is barely cold in the ground." They left, Mr. Morrison warning me that I was making a terrible mistake. The moment the door closed behind them, I collapsed on the floor and sobbed until I couldn't breathe. Not just for William, but for the cruelty of it all, for the fact that even in death, his family couldn't leave us in peace. The next morning, still shaking but determined, I called a lawyer. Margaret Chen was a fierce woman in her 60s who'd handled estate disputes for 40 years. When I told her what had happened, her face hardened. "They can't do this," she said. "They won't do this. Let me handle it." Over the next 3 weeks, Margaret built our defense. The hospice records were impeccable. Every medication dose logged, every decision documented, every conversation with William's doctors recorded. William's physician submitted a detailed statement confirming that all care had been appropriate and followed standard end-of-life protocols. But Margaret's masterstroke was something I didn't even know existed. 2 weeks before William slipped into unconsciousness, when he could still speak clearly but knew his time was short, he'd asked his doctor to record a video statement. He'd never told me about it, wanting to protect me from the knowledge that he feared his family might attack me after his death. Margaret showed me the video in her office. There was William, thin and pale but clear-eyed, sitting in our bedroom with late April sunshine on his face. "My name is William Caldwell Thompson," he said to the camera, his voice weak but steady. "I'm making this statement of my own free will, in the presence of Dr. Harrison and Nurse Jennifer Martinez, to make my end-of-life wishes absolutely clear. I have chosen hospice care over aggressive medical intervention. This is my choice, not my wife's. Grace has been nothing but supportive of whatever I wanted. She would have taken me to the hospital every day if I'd asked her to. But I don't want that. I don't want tubes and machines and pointless suffering. I've lived a long, good life with a woman I love more than anything in this world. I want to die with dignity, in our home, with Grace beside me. I know my family has never accepted Grace, has never believed she was good enough for me. I want to state clearly, she was too good for me. She gave me 55 years of love, patience, and kindness that I never deserved. Every decision she makes about my care is made with my full support and blessing. If anyone questions the care Grace provides, if anyone accuses her of anything improper, I want this video to serve as proof of the truth. She loved me when I was healthy and successful, and she loves me now when I'm dying and diminished. That kind of love is rarer than any fortune my family ever accumulated. Grace, if you're watching this, it means I'm gone. Thank you for everything. You made my life beautiful. I wept watching it, Margaret's hand on my shoulder. They don't have a case, Margaret said firmly. With this video, the hospice records, and Dr. Harrison's testimony, they have nothing but spite and greed. She was right. When Margaret sent copies of William's video to Robert and Patricia's lawyer, along with a letter threatening a countersuit for defamation and intentional infliction of emotional distress, they backed down immediately. They withdrew all allegations and threats of legal action, but the damage was done. Within days, I started hearing whispers around town. At the grocery store, conversations would stop when I approached. Former students' parents who used to greet me warmly now looked away. Someone spray-painted "murderer" on our mailbox one night. Robert and Patricia, thwarted in their legal attack, had resorted to spreading rumors throughout our small Connecticut community. She killed him for the money. She refused to let him get treatment. She gave him overdoses of morphine. The lies spread like poison through the town where I'd lived for 55 years. My lawyer could have sued them for defamation. We had proof they were lying. But Margaret looked at me with sad, understanding eyes and said, "Grace, you could spend the rest of your life fighting them and win every battle. But would it give you peace?" I thought about William's last words on that video. She loved me when I was healthy and successful, and she loves me now when I'm dying and diminished. I thought about 55 years of his family's coldness, of holidays spent enduring their contempt, of Eleanor Caldwell's dying words to William, "You wasted your life on that woman." And I realized I was done fighting. I sold the house in September 2024. It was worth $1.4 million, far more than William and I had ever imagined when we bought it for $45,000 in 1972. I sold most of the furniture, kept his books and our photographs, and donated his clothes to charity, except for that one sweater that still smelled like him. I moved to Portland, Maine, where I'd never been before, where no one knew me or William or the Caldwell family. I bought a small cottage near the ocean with enough room for my piano and William's books. I used $500,000 of the estate to establish the William C. Thompson Hospice Support Fund, which provides financial assistance to families who can't afford end-of-life care and supports training for hospice workers. The rest I kept, not because I need it. My own modest pension and Social Security are enough, but because William wanted me to have it. Because he worked his whole life and chose to leave it to me, and I honor that choice. I started teaching piano again this past spring. Just a few students, children from the neighborhood who come twice a week. Their parents don't know my history. They just know I'm Mrs. Thompson, the old lady who's patient with beginners and who keeps cookies in the piano bench. I play Clair de Lune every night before bed. I talk to William sometimes, telling him about my day, about the funny things my students say, about the ocean I can hear from my window. I don't know if he can hear me. I just know it brings me comfort. Last week, I received a letter from Patricia. No return address, postmarked from Connecticut. Inside was a single sentence. "We know what you did." I read it once, then burned it in my fireplace. They can keep their hatred. I won't carry it anymore. I've learned something in these 81 years, something that became crystal clear in the months after William's death. You cannot control how people choose to remember you, what stories they tell about you, what poison they spread in your name. You can only control who you choose to be in the face of their cruelty. Robert and Patricia will tell their version of events until they die. In their story, I'm the villain who murdered their brother for money. In their story, William was a victim of my manipulation. They need that story because the alternative, that their brother loved me more than he loved them, that he chose to exclude them from his will because of their years of coldness, that they failed him as family, is too painful to accept. Let them have their story. I have mine. In my story, I had 55 years with a man who loved me despite his family's disapproval, who held my hand through every difficulty, who chose to die with dignity rather than desperation, and who trusted me to honor his wishes even when it would cost me dearly. In my story, I learned that true wealth isn't measured in bank accounts or inheritances. It's measured in Sunday morning coffee and shared books, in being allowed to hold someone's hand as they leave this world, in knowing you loved someone well and were loved well in return. William gave me 55 years of love. His family spent 55 years despising me. I chose to bring the love with me to Portland and leave the hate behind in Connecticut. That was my choice, and I make it again every morning when I wake up in my little cottage by the sea. Some of my new students ask why I keep William's wedding photo on the piano. I tell them he was my husband, and he loved music. I don't tell them about the accusations or the legal threats or the graffiti on our mailbox. Those aren't part of the story I choose to carry forward. I teach them to play with feeling, to understand that music is about more than hitting the right notes. It's about emotion, about telling a story through sound, about creating something beautiful, even when your hands are old and stiff and the world outside is sometimes cruel. One of my students, a 7-year-old named Emma, asked me last week if I ever get lonely. Sometimes, I told her honestly, but I have my music, And I have memories of someone who loved me very much. And I have students like you who remind me that there's still beauty to create in this world. That sounds nice, she said, and went back to practicing her scales. From my cottage window, I can see the Atlantic Ocean. It's vast and indifferent, its tides governed by the moon, unconcerned with human drama and family feuds and accusations made in grief and greed. I find that comforting somehow, the reminder that the universe is larger than our small cruelties to each other. I'm 81 years old now. I don't know how many years I have left, but I know how I want to spend them, teaching music, walking by the ocean, reading William's favorite books, and choosing love over bitterness every single day. When I die, Robert and Patricia will probably tell people they were right about me all along. They'll say I lived well on money I didn't deserve, that justice was never served, and maybe some people will believe them. But I'll die knowing the truth that William knew, the truth captured in that video I watch sometimes when I miss him most. I loved him well. I cared for him with tenderness and respect until his last breath. I honored his wishes even when it cost me my reputation and my community, and I chose to build a new life rather than spend what remains of mine consumed by anger at people who were never going to change. That's my legacy. Not the money, not the house, not the battle with William's family. My legacy is that I loved deeply, cared faithfully, and when tested, chose dignity over vengeance. If there's a lesson in my story, and perhaps there isn't, perhaps it's just what happened to one old woman in Connecticut, it's this: grief makes people do terrible things. Fear of mortality, anger at inheritance, old resentments given new life by death. These can turn family members into strangers, into enemies. But you always have a choice about who you become in response. You can meet cruelty with cruelty, fight every battle, spend your remaining years proving your innocence to people who've already decided you're guilty. Or you can take what love you were given, whatever beauty you built together, and carry that forward into whatever time you have left. You can choose to be the person your loved one believed you were, the person they trusted with their final wishes, the person they loved despite all opposition. I chose the latter. I'm still choosing it every day in this cottage by the sea. And William, wherever you are, I kept my promise. I let you go gently. I honored your wishes. And I'm still playing Clair de Lune for you, my love. I'll play it until my own hands can no longer find the keys. That's enough. That has to be enough.